Thanksgiving is supposed to be all about warmth and gratitude, right? Families crowded around the table, sharing food, swapping stories, and reminding each other what they're thankful for. You've got the smell of a turkey filling the house, pies cooling on the counter, and laughter echoing each room by room. Sometimes, even on a day meant for peace and togetherness, old tensions bubble up to surface. And in 2009, for one Colorado family, a simple argument over chores spiraled way out of control. By the end of that night, a son was dead, a father's behind bars, and a family was left heartbreak and questions. So the Oliver family, spending Thanksgiving together in 2009 at their home in Colorado, on the surface should have been just another holiday, food, family, and usual chaos that comes with it. But instead of staying lighthearted, things started to boil over. This is a heartbreaking Thanksgiving case of Ayalis, Clay Oliver, a father, a son, and a moment of irreversible loss. Now, before we begin, I want to acknowledge something important. If I mispronounce the name Ayalis, I mean no disrespect. I approach this case with care for the victim and the family and everyone that's connected to this case. It was Thanksgiving Day, November 26, 2009, in Colorado, just south of Colorado Springs. Inside the home of 76-year-old Ayalis and his wife, Marjorie, 75, were joined by their twin sons. One of them was 49-year-old Keith, who had traveled from Denver to spend the holiday with his parents. From the outside, it seemed like a typical holiday gathering, but beneath the surface, fractures were building. Tensions began to something small, chores around the house. You know how it is. Somebody feels like they're doing more than their share. Somebody else doesn't want to be told what to do. Little sparks lit the fire that kept growing. The investigators later said the argument went all day. The subject, household chores. Nobody knows exactly what those chores were, but whatever it was, it consumed the whole holiday and turned Thanksgiving into a battlefield of words. At one point, Marjorie stuck right in the middle. She tried to calm things down. She even asked Keith just to step aside for a while, cool off, maybe take a drive. But he wouldn't. Keith refused to leave, and that choice kept the pressure in the house simmering. It was like everyone inside was holding their breath, just waiting for the moment when it would all boil over. By mid-afternoon, that moment came. Emotions had reached their breaking point. What started out as a simple argument about chores had grown into something much bigger, heavier, and unstoppable. By about 3:25 that afternoon, it all came ahead. Ayalis walked upstairs to his room and grabbed the .357 revolver he kept in his nightstand. With the gun in hand, he went back downstairs to the garage where Keith was waiting. Keith stood there with his mom close by, and he made one statement, almost like he was trying to prove something. He told his dad he was just trying to stand up like a man. And then, in a flash, everything changed. A single gunshot rang out. Keith collapsed. Thanksgiving Day was shattered in an instant. Just moments earlier, it had been tense words in the garage. Now it was all tragedy. The sound of a gunshot echoed through the house, cutting right through what should have been a holiday filled with peace. Marjorie's reaction was immediate, heartbroken. She cried out in disbelief, "What did you do?" In a moment, the holiday family future they thought they had was all gone. After firing the shot, Ayalis walked back inside and sat down on the steps, the revolver still in hand. His wife pleaded with him, begged him to put it down, but he didn't move. He just sat there, stunned, frozen, under the weight of what he had just done. Within minutes, deputies arrived at the house, and when they came through the door, they found Ayalis still on those steps, the gun still in hand, and the gravity of what had transpired was all over the room. Breathing heavily, he admitted to harming his son. When detectives finally questioned him, he didn't try to sugarcoat it. He admitted the whole fight with Keith had been short, maybe 5 words, he said, before he pulled the trigger. And he confessed it wasn't fear, it wasn't confusion, It was just pure anger that drove him upstairs to grab the gun. Thing is, Ayalis wasn't some stranger to responsibility or hard work. Most people knew him as Uncle Bobby. Some called him even Buddy. He'd served 4 years in the U.S. Air Force, and after that, he spent decades in the steel mills, long, back-breaking shifts that he stuck through most of his life, even into his 70s, was still clocking in at a daily job. Back in February 1960, he married Marjorie from Ohio, and later that same year, they welcomed their twin sons, Keith and Kyle. From the outside looking in, the family seemed to be a big center of his world. But by 2009, things weren't so simple. Ayalis was still helping his sons financially, paying rent, covering car payments, but deep down, he felt like it all went unappreciated. So when Thanksgiving rolled around and the fight started over chores, it wasn't really about the chores at all. For Ayalis, it was about years of carrying responsibility, feeling disrespected, and bitterness that had been building. Investigators made it clear he wasn't intoxicated that day, and he didn't have a history of mental illness. This wasn't about being drunk or unstable. It came down to pride, resentment, and anger, and the family argument that spun completely out of control. For the neighbors, the whole thing was almost impossible to take in. Deputies even said they'd never been called to that house before, not once. There was no documentation of history of violence between Ayalis and Keith, no warning signs that something like this was building. To the community, it felt sudden, senseless, and heartbreaking. One minute it was Thanksgiving, getting together, and the next, the house taped off with crime scene. Keith, 49 years old, was gone. The very next morning, Ayalis was standing in front of a judge. He was charged with first-degree murder and ordered to be held without bond in the El Paso County Jail. His next court date was set for December 2nd. The trial of Ayalis took a dramatic turn when the jury rejected the prosecution's charge of first-degree murder. They weren't convinced the shooting was an intentional act. Instead, in December 2010, Oliver was convicted of a lesser charge, manslaughter. When it came to time for sentencing, Oliver's defense team pleaded for leniency, pointing out that he had no prior felony convictions and that he could be eligible for probation. But manslaughter carried weight. The law demanded the sentence ranging anywhere from 2 to 6 years behind bars. At the heart of the trial was a single haunting question. Was it a tragedy or an accident? Or maybe a deliberate act? Oliver insisted the gun discharged by mistake, claiming it went off when he turned around. The prosecution painted a far darker picture, arguing it was premeditated. And in a devastating blow to Oliver's defense team, was his own wife had taken the stand against him. Her testimony cutting through the defense's claims and leaving the jury with lingering doubts. In any case, Elias's case was a clash between accident and intent, love and betrayal, and the verdict that left echoes long after the courtroom had emptied. Think about it. 1 minute, it's just a father and son arguing over chores, respect, and responsibility, and the same kind of arguments that happen in families everywhere. The next minute, deputies are standing in the garage where life has been stolen. That's what stings the most. Family arguments aren't rare. They're part of life, but they almost never end in violence, let alone something this final. Now, as we head into the holiday season, most of us will sit at the table with people we love, people who sometimes frustrates us, push our buttons, or stirs up old resentments. Like this are a rare and sobering reminder of how important it is to pause, take a breath, choose patience over anger. Thanksgiving is meant to bring people together. It's a holiday built on gratitude, on finding reasons to be thankful, even when life feels messy and heavy. For all of her family in 2009, all of that was lost in one single moment of rage. Keith's life was cut short, and his story still lingers, a painful reminder of what can happen when anger wins over love, and how sometimes even justice leaves more questions than answers. And in the end, Ayalis lived many more years beyond this tragic holiday. He passed away on February 3rd, 2024, closing the final chapter of life that has been full of service, hard work, and family, but forever defined by one irreversible choice on the day meant for gratitude, one moment that changed everything. Thank you so much for joining us and diving into another Thanksgiving case. There'll be more cases to come weekly. If you'd like to see more covering cases with care and respect, please don't forget to subscribe. We do care, so stay aware. The next case is already calling us. Until then, please lock your doors. Bye for now.